You keep talking about the need to follow evacuation orders if local officials give them. We know from past storms that people don't always heed that, not because they don't want to, but because they can't afford to leave the area, don't have anywhere to go, don't have family members to help them. Is FEMA doing anything to work on that particular issue, given what you're talking about with water and the danger that can come from that if people stay in place?
Yeah, so part of the pre-landfall emergency declaration is specifically to reimburse states and local jurisdictions for any of the costs that they incur to do sheltering and evacuation, because we want them to have the resources to put in place whatever measures that they need. I think the important thing on the evacuation to remember is if you're told to evacuate, especially from the storm surge area, it doesn't mean you have to go to a whole other state. And I think we often think of those pictures of contraflow lines and backed up traffic, but you really sometimes only need to go a few miles to get out of harm's way. And so the local officials should be able to tell you where there's local evacuation centers that you can go to until the threat of the storm has passed. And then when we get to the point where if they are displaced, then we have the long-term sheltering concerns that we'll have to work with. But the initial sheltering concern is just getting out of this storm's path for right now. Then we can work on what those long-term needs are. And that's why the pre-landfall declaration is so incredibly important that the president approved, is to make sure that those states have the resources to stand up those shelters and to help people get to safety.
And do you feel that the state is ready to stand up those shelters? I mean, you're talking about how you're going to reimburse them, but is Florida ready to do that?
Florida has stood up many shelters, and the American Red Cross is also there supporting that. I just need people to evacuate and go to them.
Okay, we'll wrap it up. Good, John.
Thanks, Corrine. What resources are available not only to families but also to small business in the aftermath of this storm making landfall? Resources coming not only from FEMA but also from the SBA.
Yeah, there's a number of programs that are available. For FEMA, we specifically made some changes into our disaster declaration, the Stafford Act, recently, which allows people that work from home to actually get compensated for some of their business losses if they work from home, like if they had a computer or other equipment that they needed to do their personal, if they're a photographer and they lost their cameras. So we just made that change recently in March to be able to compensate small business owners that work from home. SBA can speak specifically about their programs, but they've also made some really amazing changes this year, which increases the dollar amount that people can borrow from the SBA. It extends the time where they're going to delay the interest until they have to pay it or to start to repay that loan. And it's a tremendous resource to really help small businesses get back on their feet.
And how do you decide where to position yourself tomorrow with the storm making landfall?
So we're looking at where we think the biggest impact is going to be, and right now it looks like it's a dead-on hit to Tallahassee. And so we'll fly as close to Tallahassee as we can get, and then I'll meet up with the governor and his team so I can see what the impacts are, hear what the team is thinking, and then we will assess, right? I've got staff on the ground that will have the intel as to where the hardest hit areas are. And then typically we like to either get an aerial view so I can fly over and see what some of those damages are, or on the ground if need be. But I'm also prepared to move up to Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, as we start to see what those impacts are and assess that. And because me being on the ground helps me validate some of the damages more quickly so we can get major declarations in place faster.
Last question.
Thank you. At the start of this year, you rolled out reforms to cut some of the red tape for the individual assistance program. Now that so many people are in the path of this storm, can you give an update on how quickly you expect survivors to be able to tap into that, given those changes that were put in effect more than 6 months ago at this point?
Yeah, we've seen some really tremendous positive impact from the changes that we have made. In fact, one of the changes we made was we decoupled the requirement to apply for an SBA loan in order to be eligible for our programs, and it's really saving people several days in the process, and we're getting a large number of people that wouldn't have come back to us, which is great. We're also seeing people get funding quicker, right? We have serious needs assistance that can get them a very small amount of money to help with some of their immediate costs, but also the individual and households program that can help them with if they're underinsured. And so it really all depends on what their specific need is. The money that they will see the fastest typically is that initial $750. Any damages to their home, we still have to assess and see what those damages are, and then can make that determination. But we have teams that go right out in the field. They can register them in the field, and that really helps to speed up the process.
Okay, all right, thank you so much,
you,
Administrator.
Corinne.
Appreciate it. Thank you.